This is Yoru, an agent who's taken Valorant by storm in its current meta. With his versatile kit and ability to control the tempo of a match, he's become the catalyst to an aggressive and skirmishy state of the game. And this dominance was shown crystal clear on the international stage at this year's first international event, Masters Bangkok. Yoru was by far the highest pick rate duelist at Bangkok and a staple pick of both the event's finalist teams, G2 and T1. Today, we're going to explore what makes the likes of Jorgamo, Buzz, and Izu so incredible on Yoru to find out ways you can emulate their style in your own matches, by looking at each of the finalist runs through playoffs into the best grand final in Valorant history. Stylistically, Yoru is an incredibly versatile agent. He has two strong flashes which are good for disrupting enemy scaling and building momentum, and an instant reposition tool which gives him a lot of control over the tempo and information in a round. Combining this with the best execing ult in the entire game, we get an agent with unbelievable power moving. Today, we'll look at Jorgamo, Buzz, and Izu's positioning, util use, and general resource management to discern what makes a great Yoru. After a huge statement win against Vitality in the first round of playoffs, G2's second round match was against none other than EDG, the reigning champions of 2024, and the team to deliver G2's first defeat of the year earlier this event in the Swiss stage. The winner of this books their ticket to the grand final, within striking distance of the trophy. And this is where we'll begin our look at how Jorgamo plays Yoru for G2. Coming off a strong first step on Lotus, the second map of Split, and EDG's own map pick is what I want to focus on for this series. G2's Split comp is a commonplace one in the game's current meta, mixing the explosive burst power of Yoru and Breach with the zoning and information control of agents like Viper and Taeho. On the opposite side of things, EDG are running near enough the same thing, just with Kong on Jett instead of the Yoru. G2 start this map on defense. The crux of their strategy on this side is all in using Jorgamo's instant rotations to their advantage to take skirmishes, throw off EDG's information, and play around floods and util dumps to contest execs on site. We see this beautifully in round 5. G2 are forcing down into a spotty purchase this round. Most have rifles, except for Jorg with a stinger and Jonas down a flash coming in. EDG are sitting a little prettier with full rifles off a win last round. At about the halfway point in the half, ults are starting to cycle in now. Jorg has D-Drift online, and EDG are 1 point out from their pit and Armageddon. The round start plan for G2 is to play for flood rotations on either site by centralizing their players. Jorg has a TP for A and starts vent for a potential mid-fight with Leaf and Valen. To dissuade EDG from taking B, Valen plans to smoke B main like this and either force resources out of EDG or just make them rotate off. This will funnel them into mid or a reactionary A hit where G2 have set up their kill zones. EDG are playing an extremity-based default. They plan on manipulating G2's rotations by claiming B main with early util and rotating into a potential lurk from Chichu and Smoggy at A if B seems stacked. They're using this Viper wall which fully cuts G2's information into bottom ramp rather than a default wall which threatens heaven passing. This is because they plan on pulling Jorgamo's potential rotation and TP with their early movement and capitalizing on the lack of deep information from there to take an easy exec. The round starts with Valen's smoke trading blows with a stun and salvo combo in B main, resulting in a stalemate. Chichu and Smoggy remain incredibly deep at A main during that initial trade out. This is anti for a potential A main set play with Jorg's Yoru ult and Jonas stun, as Smoggy can camp Jorg's ult exit and protect Chichu. With mid silent, Trent drones to check out ramp for if Jorg needs to reinforce A. Since Smoggy and Chichu are respecting the Yoru ult though, he finds nothing and EDG can scale up to ramp completely undetected. Jorg takes his TP here and rotates through spawn towards B with Jonah on the read that EDG are in B main. And with that, EDG have found their timing. They drone through ramp, smoke off Trent, and start up their exec. Kong is isolated site by Trent and Jonah's util, giving G2 a brief line to flood in from CT, which Jonah takes.
Isolating the player behind, can't control site.
Jorg is quick to support with a clone and a flash, trading out Kong and reclaiming the site as G2's. Another flash and nobody's smoke exit is dismantled by the swing, leaving Smoggy alone and the round as good as over.
1v4 necessary. Lovely on one, spots a second. Some more for us here, Smoky. Not in the...
Let's look at Jorgamo's decision making in this round. At round start, he's playing Vent. Simple enough. That said though, Jorg actually takes his TP even though G2's read is that EDG are leaning into B. This is possibly because by taking the TP, Jorg resets himself onto the CT axis of rotation rather than the central one. This allows him to throw another TP towards the same spot while rotating and enables him to rotate in time with Jonah for the CT exit at B. Since G2 didn't want to make any big plays, Jorg held onto his flashes and cloned for the flood, so he had all of that burst to come into the space that G2 had given up on the site path. The flood itself was very strong as well. As EDG's exec started up, Trent's salvos forced everyone but Kong behind Leaf's wall, isolating him on site proper. This smoke reset enabled Trent to exit the heaven smoke and reinforce the wall, which enabled Jorg to ramp in and clear the uncovered Kong. This shows us how Yoru can be so useful for disrupting in-progress execs in open space like A site, and this is a really replicable situation. With a comp like this, G2's big aim for these rounds is to get that initial isolation on the entry and capitalize on the open flash zones left to flood in, and Jorg played that role here perfectly. Right at the end of the half, in round 12, we see a fantastic example of Yoru's value in controlling information and enabling his entire team to play deeper lines on defense. This round, G2 are going in with a massive economic advantage, fully purchased and with a spare op on Leaf for an initial pick. EDG's buy is spotty with a Spectre and a Judge on Kong along with his Jet Knives. In terms of ults, G2 are only working with Jorgamo's Yoru ult, while EDG are coming in with Kong and Chichu's ults up and Simon and Nobody's 1 out. Despite having 2 ults to G2's 1, EDG really want to get Simon or Nobody's ult active to give them some real exec power to burst onto site and set up Chichu's pit for the post plant. G2's plan is to stop that at any cost. They have Jorgamo on jump up at B to take an early pick and tax EDG's orb take, while Leaf holds mid from Vent. Jonah and Trent are guarding A main to hold deep info there as well. To enable all these deep lines, Jorg's TP is just in spawn. If Leaf loses his line, Jorg can help reinforce either heaven side or ult to check that space, and if Trent and Jonah are forced backwards, they'll have flood rotations in time thanks to some stall from Leaf's wall. EDG spend their usual B main util at round start and smoke Leaf's line, but unfortunately, that's as far as Kong goes. EDG are then stalled out by Viper util and salvos. They use their Viper orb to secure garage, but no luck there either. Jorg TP's out and the map looks great for G2. But that's never enough for them. With deep info in A main and EDG players lean towards B, Jorg throws his TP for B spawn and chooses to ult through mid and re-clear that space to completely settle the information on the map. Finding mid completely clear, he chooses to regroup with the team and stop EDG's B move, but first creates just a little extra pressure. He ends his ult out of LOS in spawn, then TPs back to B. This creates the sound queue in EDG spawn to threaten the flank, and since Yoru's TP only makes a sound at the target location, that pressure remains and actually keeps Simon stuck holding spawn while Chichu's taken out. G2 set up a cross for the B main exit from there to close things out.
And it looks like there's no way out of it. Simon gonna do what he can, as he can, but there's nothing to do but die.
This round was much more in the macro options that Yoru provides rather than his burst power. It's because of Jorg's TP in spawn that G2 were able to play such deep lines all over the map and deny those ult orbs. Equally, his ult turned an up-numbered situation with some limited information into a complete smothering of EDG, so they had no options and were constantly contending with pressure and an information deficit. This is a really easy way to get value out of Yoru ult during mid-round pauses if you want to keep an information advantage or set up a hard anchor later in the round. Jorg's ult exit is also a really strong way to get value out of ults on defense. By threatening EDG's spawn, he pressured them into their B hit despite taking absolutely no risks, and set himself up to trade with the team. As for attack, I want to look at this round which demonstrates how Jorg abuses the macro potential of Yoru and his ability to drastically switch up the tempo in a round. This round's a pretty even purchase with full rifles either side, but EDG look a little worse for wear with some lighter shields sprinkled in. EDG are playing an evenly spread and reactive 2-1-2 default and holding their util for site play rather than pushing out into deeper lines. G2 on the other hand are playing for early contact into B main to pull rotations onto that side so they can force an A split. Jorg's Yoru util will be integral to the timing of this plan. At round start, Smoggy smokes deep A main while G2 contact into B. They force Smoggy's smoke by taking the line through pillar. Since Jorg has a TP for spawn, he's the one to contact wide for Smoggy's pillar position because he can't be punished from behind the main box. Having forced the smoke, G2 now reset to clear mid. Meanwhile, Leaf dodges nobody's drone in A main, which indicates that EDG could have contacted back onto the ramp line. To punish, after a slow round start, now G2 ramp up the pace. They combo Jorg's TP with Jonah's stun to instantly clear vent and isolate Chichu and Mail behind Valent's smoke. This pressures the ramp and A heaven players with the threat from both main and vent, giving G2 a perfect setup for the A split after Trent's drone. To keep the pace going, now Jorg commits the rest of his util to ramp into the round and full claim A heaven and isolate EDG's site players. Since he has no util left, Jorg chooses to hold the CT smoke and cut nobody's flood exit while the rest of the team isolates Simon. EDG's flooding players all fall one by one until Smoggy's left all alone in the clutch to fall to Jorgamo.
Trying to get into his own head here, takes the TP, now knows.
This round was all in the mid-rounding and positioning. By solidly forcing EDG off the B main line, G2 were able to establish enough pressure that they could be sure Chichu would be on the male side of mid, and that was precisely the opening they needed to blitz into mid and set up their A split. This kind of combo with Initiator util also demonstrates an easy way to quickly capitalize on open space. Plenty of other high-level teams love to use this in their execs as well. For example, on Split, DRX love to use this in their B hit. After stabilizing their ramp control, using Jorg's burst util to increase the pace into heaven and start their momentum enabled G2 to isolate Simon on site. It's during these moments on attack where you want to shift gears from a pause into a fast move that Yoru is best placed into committing his util. While it's not explicitly Yoru related, I also want to admire this incredibly robust triangle G2 setup to isolate the flooding smoke exits while keeping Simon powerless in backside. The awareness to deal with the smoke exit, then turn for the backside player after stopping nobody's flood is one of those details that truly makes G2 a top level team. By the end of this map, G2 have claimed their spot in the grand final, and at that, in dominating fashion. Meanwhile, while G2 are living it up with a secured spot in Grands, T1 find themselves fighting for their tournament lives in the lower semis against Team Vitality, one of the absolute favourites coming into this event. After an incredibly close overtime loss on Lotus, the Korean squad now must mount a reverse sweep, starting on their opponent's own map pick of Haven. T1's style as a team is more aggressive, skirmishy, and individual than the style we saw from G2. We can see hints of this even in the comp T1 are running, which should be a tad familiar. Where G2 like to use Jorg's TPs a little more evenly throughout a round to control information, Buzz is much more interested in using his util to actively generate pressure and advantage fights. In this map, we'll look at a couple examples of this on the attack side. Here we have T1's bonus round. Their buy is a little shaky off the back of a bloody anti-eco, leaving Vitality at a definite economic advantage. This round, T1 are looking to make a fast claim of A long to force Vitality off their balance and dictate the pacing, especially since their buy in this round is weaker. This is also quite an easy part of the map to claim against Vitality's comp, since without an ISO, they're much weaker fighting back into long than T1 are, for example. Vitality have 3 players stationed over here to command lobby with their advantaged guns, so this round will come down to a brawl early on. As the round starts up, Sylvan smokes short and TPs into it to anti-Durka's common aggro into that smoke. Now, they combo to send Buzz on the offensive. Izu throws this cage, which enables Buzz's TP. Combined with a common long dart from Stacks, Buzz is able to completely claim A long and even take down safe. With that pick, T1 decide to capitalize and exec A. Buzz chooses now to commit the rest of his util. His clone clears in case of trips and capitalizes on the pressure his kill creates for anyone tucked close, and his second flash combos with his TP to scale for backside. Since he's the deepest committed and has no more util to burn, he uses his position to police Kix's flood while the rest of his team scales in, not unlike how Jorg played on Split before. This enables Meteor to scale up wide with him so Buzz can then turn his attention to Trex, who's completely bled out of his position by the pressure of T1 surrounding him. As the only two left standing, Les and Durka are forced to save. Being the skirmishy team that they are, T1 tend to make their big opportunities to explode earlier in the rounds than G2 often do, as we saw here. Their A long claim shows just that. It required the early spend of a Yoru flash and TP, but in so doing not only full claimed lobby by setting up a thorough hold on the long cage, but also enabled an opportunistic exec off Buzz's pick. Another really important element of T1's success in this round was Buzz's situational awareness. He not only recognized that his pick and long signified a big opportunity to exec, but also knew when to stop scaling and wait for his team during that exec. This allowed him to get value even without any util by holding off Kix's flood, and to not compromise the team's scaling power by dying and leaving an open line in backside before Meteor could get there. This demonstrates the power in abusing your repositioning to enable your team's movement on Yoru as opposed to merely scaling quickly. Buzz's TPs both in A long and on site were used to facilitate the rest of the team's exec by setting Buzz up in harmonious positions of pressure, which is exactly what a strong entry needs to do. In the very next round, we get more of that executional prowess. Coming off a big win in the bonus, T1 are naturally economically advantaged here, with Vitality scraping together what they can with the two rifles they held over last round. T1's intention is to make quick work of this round with a C-split using Buzz's Yoru ult. Vitality have decided to run a more reactive look at A since A long is such a problem for them, while bolstering their C side for harder anchors. As the round starts up, T1 waste no time at all starting their exec. They send Buzz ulting with 3 in tow and stacks alone towards long to break trips. Interestingly, Buzz chooses to path his ult shallow in front sight rather than full clearing back sight. This earns the kill on Kix and actually sets Buzz up in the long smoke to exit safely with a flash. Despite an unfortunate death from Meteor, T1 get themselves into an incredibly robust post plant. With Izu guarding Garage with a trip window and his crosshair on the doors, Buzz and Sylvan are able to set up a strong counterswing for the CT exit. They even have the contingency of Buzz's TP for long if he and Stacks need to peel off to play for time later in the post plant. Happily enough though, it doesn't come to that as Trex and Durka are forced into yet another save to put T1 on match point. While a simple enough round, there's quite a lot we can pull out here about the versatility of Yoru's util. Ordinarily, it's normal for Yoru players when execing with ult to scale deep, hide out of LOS, and use their clone as added pressure to advantage them to get a pick in a 1v1. But here, Buzz used his ult to facilitate his team scaling and secure a stronger teamfight on site. He began his ult early to guarantee safe scaling toward Garage rather than risk any stall at the doors or in mid. As we pointed out earlier, his scaling into site was also shallower. Rather than scaling deep, he chose to guarantee front site control and a more stable trade infrastructure moving into back site. But his more thorough clearance also meant he was on pace with the rest of T1 and enabled Izu to catch safe looking for timing out of window, as well as to set up his trip and cage for their post plant. From all this, we can really see the depth of tempo variation you can achieve with Yoru. Buzz was able to control the pacing and even the locations of the fights here just by scaling as he did and choosing to play with his team in his ult. Fittingly, after those two incredibly dominant rounds, T1 used the next to seal the map with a resounding 13-4 scoreline. And off a 13-5 win in map 3, the underdogs had vanquished one of the favourites to take this entire tournament at 4th place. Now that we've seen what each of our teams can do with Yoru in their hands, we can look at how these styles clash at the very end of the line, the grand final. This is a showdown between the tournament favourites and the underdogs, the undeniable and the massively underrated. The Bangkok Grand Final was a close, blow-for-blow series all 5 maps. To dissect how these team styles clashed, I want to look at the very final map, Pearl. On this map, both teams have drastically different approaches to their compositions. G2's comp uses Yoru as their sole duelist and, as is their style, relies on the ability to slow down pacing and work the map in longer rounds, in this case by using 2 sentinels. T1 though went in the exact opposite direction. With Buzz and Izu both on Duelist, for them it's all about seizing the pacing and finding a small opportunity to blitz into a round and close out. We're starting out at the end of the first half. G2 have lost their standing in the half with the last few rounds and want to find their footing before going into their defense, while T1 are hungry to close the half with a dominant 8-4 lead. Naturally, G2 find themselves forcing into this round with a pretty weak buy. Their only Vandal is on Jorg, and at that he's sacrificed a flash and a clone to buy it, and Valen and Trent are working only with a stinger each. G2's big foot in the door this round is in their ults. They have Jorg's Yoru ult and a 1 point out from Jonah's Vice ult, 2 huge resources for setting up a strong exec and post plant. T1's buy is massively advantaged, 4 rifles with an off on Izu coming in and a Yoru ult of their own from round start. The plan for G2 is to set up an A split to try and establish a strong post plant on A where their stingers stand a chance into T1's rifles. They'll aim to grab Jonah's ult orb at round start from A main. To do this, it'll be an early take on A main and some reclear in mid. Leaf is starting the round over at B just to hold for deep pushes. For T1, their plan is to play Izu deep B main with Sylvan supporting at round start for the pick, while A is played super reactively for the retake with Izu's ult. This is especially strong in this round because Jorg and Jonah's ult combo is so strong for taking A. A lot of this round will hinge on the value Jorg and Izu can get with their ults in the exec and retake. Starting up, G2 go for a thorough A main clear. Trent darts for the deep walk, and Jonah throws his flash to clear close for the potential op. Valen combines this with a recall start to enable the cross into deep main as well. Since T1 are playing retake A, they don't challenge Jonah's orb pickup, but Meteor does break his rose, forcing Valen's recall start and establishing frontside pressure. Since G2 are leaning towards A, Izu walks up B main for a deeper line and Sylvan falls back to alley so Buzz can lean where G2's pressure is. Meanwhile, Jorg in classic fashion is quick to TP off after claiming A main to clear mid and establish more pressure for the A split. Here, he uses his ult to clear as much space as possible for the split. He initially pats for alley and full clears, then takes his TP into main to clear front sight and exits art to meet with Leaf. This sets G2 up with the 2 areas they need to split the site and scale with Jonah's Vice ult. It also forces Buzz into the long rotation through sewer into flower because of the established pressure in art. T1 managed to stall the plan with Meteor's mollies and trade drones with G2 in the following pause. This buys enough time for Izu to arrive and pop a flood ulti of his own. Izu's ult enables Meteor to walk out and swing since there are no threat players Church or Default, and with front sight and main full cleared, he can play his swings around Default to shred the G2 players coming in from art. From here, even though Izu falls, T1 have an easy cleanup.
Solid shopper needs far more of that. Will not be given the opportunity. Weapons juggled. Leaf heads up on a Guardian with 4 bullets. 3 might just be all that he needs. A tap. The T1 not quite falling for it, and Buzz slides over.
This round gives us a lot to learn about the value of Yoru ult in facilitating the movement of his team. The trick Jorg used with the TP during his ult allowed him to set up an incredibly solid A split. By clearing alley and frontside A, then exiting in art, he managed to give Leaf the info he needed to guarantee a safe walk for art, set up a pincer for the potential art player with Leaf, and establish frontside was clear for the smoke exit. This forced T1's first wave of stall util just because they had no means of repositioning into that space from the info. This trick of using the TP in Yoru's ult can be used to extend the distance he can cover or to clear multiple important lanes like Jorg did to maximize that value. It's important also to acknowledge how Jorg's ult was maximized by G2's general plan with the macro. They left mid open for reclear where Jorg's ult started, but took early space in A main so that Jorg had some initial space to work with and didn't have to clear too much preliminary space. This meant when he exited his ult in the art smoke, he represented the pressure of 2 corresponding smoke exits for T1, leaving them powerless to hold onto front sight as G2 flooded in. Izu's ult played a similar role by enabling Meteor to swing around default. T1 had no real means of getting onto the site anymore and threatening G2's plant. Izu's ult was the whole reason Meteor could work his way back onto backsite and play around default with the cover from Stax and Buzz in spawn. It also enabled Izu to threaten the art exit with a crossfire setup, even though that eventually got dismantled by a clean shot from Jorg. This round is a good one to use because neither Jorg nor Izu carried in terms of fragging or fighting here, but they were able to identify ways to use their ult in particular to get maximum value in terms of the timing and space on the map they were working with. Jorg essentially secured timing for his entire team in different parts of the map on his own. Izu, on the other hand, was able to identify a point where G2 were off their balance, but T1 had no means of fighting in and capitalizing, and used his ult to win the information battle Stax and Trent had been fighting until then. Since Stax had spent Dart on the main exit and Trent and Stax traded drones to force Meteor away, Izu's ult was exactly what Meteor needed to get back into a strong position and do what he does best from backside.
Says, yeah, it's here. They're at art. The swing onto the corner, coming through really bolt, not quite connecting.
All the way at the back end of next half, we get another big round from Izu and T1. Both sides are working with full rifles, but T1 have had to force down some lighter shields after a rough economic streak this half. Their saving grace is Izu's ult being 1 out from active. Down 11-12 in the final map of the whole tournament, this round is T1's only chance to keep the map going. This is how they'll do it. T1 are playing the ambitious plan of scouting every lane at round start. They have Stax and Sylvan at B where they'll drone to scout, empowering it with a deep smoke and a recall star. Meteor will turret mid, and Buzz and Izu are playing to take A main with a cross-map dart from Stax, as well as Sylvan's default recall star to get Izu the ult orb. This plan enables T1 to keep Leaf's chamber up at bay, as well as to take early control of information, especially since they know Trent will want to hold his silver dart for floods or an ult on the plant. G2 are playing a reactive style this round and taking no risks. They have Trent playing central and holding his dart for flood spam wherever T1 decide to exec. He's supported by Sentinel Util on either side. Their B side is dynamic with 2 TP characters to get a pick and peel off for the retake, while A is covered in stall resources. The round starts up with T1's initial util and some safe scaling onto the extremities. Stax darts A for Buzz and Izu's walk, Meteor turrets mid, and Stax drones B main. And just like that, T1 have achieved control of all preliminary space across the map. Izu threatens the potential Vice Wall with his clone and guarantees control of the line for his ult take. Meanwhile, Sylvan's ended up deep B main behind his smoke. Given all the pressure around the map, Trent drones into mid and finds nothing but Meteor's turret, and hearing the drone expire, Meteor takes his timing into mid to sit by double door. With this comes a little pause before T1 decide to end at B, but not before sowing a little more discontent in the round. Izu ults with Buzz's fast lane to force G2's rotation and push the A players off. As he TPs off to join the team for the A hit, he employs a familiar trick. From there, the timing is perfect for the exec onto B, especially with the timing all that pressure was able to generate for Meteor.
They need to get going right here, right now. G2. Rotation's about to begin. The stun under 1, Leaf gonna be taken down. Trent backpedaling, tagged up just a bit. Tries to counter.
T1 get themselves into a relatively aggressive post plant for the close. With Meteor and Buzz positioned for double swings on the close exits, Izu and Sylvan take initial contact from wider positions to play them in. With positioning like this, G2 get absolutely shredded trying to enter site.
Takes him out of the equation. Time once again dwindling. Trent gonna be taken down. Swap in. It is far from over.
And with that, T1 forced the map into overtime. This round is a great example of Yoru's ability to enable skirmishes and trade fights on the map. Because as a duelist, he has so many options for generating pressure and repositioning, spending his util on pressure like this can allow Yoru to generate blind spots that the rest of the team can capitalize on. Of course, especially in a round like this, Izu wasn't wholly responsible for the macro. Meteor found fantastic timing in mid, and the util from Stax and Sylvan set him up to play into the round from main, but the Yoru ult did a lot of heavy lifting from there. It's also important how willing Izu was to spend early util like his clone and flash on the A main walk to threaten Sentinel util and guarantee Leaf couldn't kill on a deep line. This is especially important in double dive comps like T1s. While ordinarily, a lot of Yorus tend to hold at least a flash in the TP for exec time to entry, having Buzz on Neon means Izu can be a bit more liberal in the mid round since the team's execs won't suffer. At last, we've reached our final round for this video. By now, in round 27, deep into overtime in the final map of the entire tournament, both sides' playbooks are running dry, and it all comes down to who can hold their composure and close things out. Since it's overtime, naturally there are rifles across the board, and all ults are 3 points out. Izu has opted to come in with an op, so as down both flashes and glass cannoning. The plan for T1 is to play heavily to support Izu into a deep line at A from round start, while playing a retakey B side with deep util from Meteor. This is a response to G2's generally extremity-based default style, based around their default recall stars. For G2, the plan is to threaten both extremities similarly to how T1 defaulted in round 24, but in this case, to explore mid during the pause and set up a split, rather than playing for a deep extremity insert like T1 did. While T1 are looking to hold Izu in one deep position and use his TP as a safe out to maintain that leverage, G2, in a style much more typical of them, plan on using Jorg's TP more dynamically early on to generate pressure on multiple lanes simultaneously. As the round starts up, both sides trade silver darts in A main. Izu tucks to hide from Trent's dart and uses Stax to inform his walk up after the dart expires. With Izu deep in A main, T1 can now flatten the map out. They send Sylvan towards Link, and Stax plays a relaxed position in art to keep reactivity high. To maintain the question mark in main A, Valen recalls his start to threaten the cross to the main box, but Izu's that guy, so halts his line anyway. This play actually demonstrates a pretty big stylistic difference between these two teams. Across the whole tournament, T1 have been pretty willing to contact and backfill space in certain key areas when they have a confident read, whereas G2 expect a lot more respect than that when they threaten certain crosses. G2 send Trent and Jorg to threaten B main using a standard drone and recall star. Since they find Meteor's turret here, it becomes safe to assume that T1 will be playing a flood retake on this side, so their players will rotate fairly quickly off the turret breaking. Because Leaf and Jonah have used the team's extremity pressure to stake a claim on mid, G2 thus decide to try for the A split. Off the back of G2 creating a question mark in B main, Stax opts to re-clear mid to clear his rotation towards B if needed. G2 dodge the drone and use that as their timing to move in. As Valen and Jorg scale into A main, where they believe T1 never re-cleared off the recall, Izu catches Valen and makes a quick exit into Flowers. With G2 down their smokes, his hold on the line into A main creates a lot of pressure, preventing a perfect A split till he's forced off. G2 managed to get around this by timing Jorg's clone with the art exit. With the pressure of the op going down, Sylvan's smoke in main enables Meteor to do his usual thing and play his swings default, while Izu contacts back out. Izu goes down to Jonah, but with Stax around dugout and Meteor firmly entrenched backside, G2 have no way of scaling into backside and dismantling T1's trades, leaving T1 with the round win.
Dancing around, needs a shock dart. Jonah P falls to the wayside. Talk about Trent, trying to fight back!
There's quite a lot in this round we can look at to learn about Yoru. It exemplifies some of the core differences between G2 and T1 stylistically. While G2 tend to use Jorg's TP for cross-map rotations on defense so he can contribute more to the overall macro, it's much more T1 style to play Yoru in deeper positions for quick repositions on a micro scale. T1 facilitate this general plan in this round by supporting Izu onto his deeper line for the trade out of early util, then using his position to play a weaker art since they know they have higher reactivity around A for the anchor. Playing deeper util at B also enables this by giving T1 plenty of time to rotate towards B if needed, without risking any deaths by committing a player onto those lines. On their offense, G2 here played their quintessential style by using Jorg's util to declare many question marks on the map from the early round, but T1 won out by being proactive about calling them. Izu was willing to play into deep main because Valen would never just play this main recall without deep clearance or pressure elsewhere on the map, and Stax' drone in art was timed perfectly around the pressure on the rest of the map to ensure T1 could still react to the A split even if they relaxed everyone but Izu's position. This whole round for T1 was built around Izu being maintained on his deep line by supporting util, which enabled the overall macro plan and the round win. It's also really useful to admire Jorg's clone here, which genuinely could have been round winning. The timing of this clone enabled him to take Izu off his important line for the A split to come in, which isolated T1 into backside due to double swing threats. Unfortunately for G2 though, T1 are incredible at playing backside A. Rounds like this demonstrate the pure grit that T1 brought into this grand final, which ultimately led to them being crowned the champions of Masters Bangkok. Our journey through the playoffs of Masters Bangkok has not only demonstrated some of the broad and specific strengths of Yoru as an agent, but also acted as a celebration of what T1 and G2 accomplished here. While Yoru was our lens for analyzing the play in this video, there was a lot here to celebrate about each team purely in their own right. In any event, I at least hope you've enjoyed and now know just a little bit more about what Yoru can offer to your comps and strats in server. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a lovely day.